has a different, thank you, Aaron. Um, Everybody's got a different background. I didn't really have any experience in this field at all. I came from a full-on teaching background. I was a high school family consumer science teacher, which is just like a fancy word for home ec. And then take a break to have my second daughter, and then was just really open, and this industry kind of just fell in my lap, truly. And it's been a learning curve. But it's been so wonderful. And so I say that because I want each and every one of you to know, like, you may be coming from something that's completely unrelated to anything sales, anything insurance. But as long as you're coachable and teachable and just willing to learn, willing to just be humble to like self-reflect and apply coaching, you can make it in this industry for sure. So they want us to go over several things. They want us to give you guys kind of a behind the scenes look at, like, what does it look like for me as an agent and my unique life and my unique scenario? Because really at the end of the day, everybody's got a different story, a different schedule, a different way of doing things, different availability. Some people are full-time, some people are part-time. Everybody's life just looks a little bit different. So if you can pull little pieces of what I do and what Andre does and how we do things, sometimes it just takes somebody saying something a different way and it clicks. So I think that's one of the helpful, one of the reasons that they're having different people hop on these calls is that sometimes it just takes one person saying something in a different way to really make it click. So let me check and make sure Andre's not on here. Okay. So the first thing that they wanted to talk about was scheduling and what that looks like for each, like me and Andre. My schedule is honestly like evolves every single week. I've gone on a call before with Nick. You may or may not have been on it, but this was probably like last year. I am like a slave to my calendar because my family is busy. We've got two young girls, one's 4 and one's 7, and they're both involved in activities. My husband works, I work. I like to cook dinner. Like, we live a pretty simple life, but it's like our kids are involved in stuff. So our life is changing a lot. So I live and breathe by my calendar. And I will tell y'all, there are some weeks where I work maybe closer to full time, not really ever 40 hours a week. And a lot of weeks that I'm very, very part-time. In the summer, I work like 2 days a week because we've got 2 girls. So I want to show you what my calendar looks like, so you can kind of understand what life looks like. If you're not using a calendar, shame on you. You should be. I don't know how you function without one. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Start broadcast. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I'm going to show y'all. Where is Google Calendar? Here it is. Okay, so this is my, can y'all see that? I hope y'all can see that. Text me if you can't see it. This is my calendar. So again, it looks different every week, but I live and breathe by this. You can see this week we have something every single night. And this is my work time. This changes every week. Honestly, my kids have so many days off of school. It's rare that I actually like work 5 days a week, but I just want to show you, like, if you're super busy, if you're kind of busy, if you literally have nothing going on aside from just you and maybe your spouse, like, you just have to take whatever time you do have and be a good steward of that time and just like squeeze as much juice as you can out of the time that you have. So every week is different. Some weeks I kind of start my calendar off like full with dials just to hold myself accountable. And then when that day comes, typically I'll like get rid of that specific event. Like, for instance, tomorrow with dials, once I start dialing, I'm going to delete that and I'm going to hopefully start to fill it in with second appointments from after I'm talking to people. So I'm doing virtual. And that's really kind of how I do things. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, but hopefully that just gives you a good idea, of like what my crazy life looks like. So let me stop sharing the screen here. Okay, perfect. Make sure, I gotta check to make sure Andre's. Okay. Oh, he is here. Okay. Promote to panelist. Okay. Andre, can you hear us?
Yep. Sorry, guys.
Okay. Perfect.
I let them know I coach on Monday and Tuesday, so I
You're
just got
good.
that.
You're good. You're good. So I just kind of talked about my schedule, typically how mine kind of ebbs and flows with the weeks, just depending what we have going on. But being consistent with that schedule, do you want to talk a little bit about your schedule?
Yeah. So for me personally, 1 second, it's about to connect to my car.
You're good. I got you like right as you're rushing out the door.
Yeah.
Did we lose him?
Okay. Can you guys?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So for me personally, sorry if y'all can't see me. I really just try to keep my day pretty simple. Most of the stuff that me personally I will do is I try to finish everything on one call. I don't set too many appointments. Usually for appointments, it's more so for the bigger things. People who are committing to more, like an IUL. I think those are more important to kind of have multiple touch points on. To make sure that people are really in, especially if they're spending, 3, 4, $500 a month. I think it is important to make sure that it's something that they're gonna, really follow up on. And if you do it in one call, you might catch them in their emotions, but then a week goes by or whatever, and now all of a sudden, they're changing their mind. So, as far as my schedule goes, I will really just try to sit down for, an hour at a time and just dial. And I don't do it, I'm not checking emails. I'm not scrolling up and down social media or anything like that. I'm just dialing for that hour. And then if I want to take a break afterwards, um, I can step away and do that. But to be honest, I keep it pretty simple with just call for an hour, take a break. You might get on the phone, and if you are having a conversation, you might be on the phone for an hour and a half or so, or an hour, and then take a second to kind of do whatever, especially if you're working remote, working from home. But that's really the main thing for me is I think that just calling all day through and through can be a little bit overwhelming for people, including myself. If I just sit there and um, all day long, I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's a lot. You're sitting down, you're not moving around or anything like that. So um, I think that that's important for me to just break it down, focus
Yeah.
on it for an hour, let yourself kind of cool off for a second, because you might go an hour and not really get much traction. Um, and maybe you need a reset. Me personally, I definitely do. So I'll take a reset and then start dialing again.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I was actually talking to another agent about that a couple weeks ago of like it's a little bit different when if you're booking appointments for in-person dialing, you're having like unique dial sessions typically like a morning, an afternoon, and an evening. But when you're virtual and you're sitting down all day and you're dialing and you're dialing and you're dialing and you're dialing, I mean, you're making 70 to 100 dials a day. It's easy to like lose your mind. So taking those breaks, standing up, doing a lap around the house or whatever, going and getting a glass of water. You have to you have to time block yourself. Or you will absolutely go nuts. Nick mentioned introduce yourself and tell your story a little bit, like how you got into insurance, for people that don't know you.
So I was living in Houston, Texas, and I was actually, I was in insurance, but I was doing property and casualty, which is like home auto insurance. I was working for a brokerage called Deuce had insurance. And so, um, yeah, I was working down there, and one of the things that we have to do, or that brokers have to do for home insurance, is we don't buy leads. The way we got our business was through meeting realtors, loan officers, um, people, title reps. And what they did was, when somebody's closing on a house, you have to have homeowners insurance. So for them to close, they have to have the insurance. So the realtors that I built relationships with, they would reach out to me and say, "Hey, Andre, I got so and so closing on a house. He needs insurance by this date." And one of the realtors that I worked with is his name was Jerome. He met Mike through, I think, Stacy, I believe, is who they met through. And at the time, I was kind of looking to maybe do something part time. I had my life insurance license already, so I was thinking of maybe just doing something on the side. Mike had a what's it called? I guess a little hotspot at Jerome's house. I came over there, and that's how I met. Mike. And
Okay.
coincidentally, I was already going to be in the process of moving to North Carolina. I had no clue that the corporate office was there, but I was already going to be going there. Yeah, that's it. So that's kind of how I got started. And when I moved to
Similar.
North Carolina, huh? Oh,
I said
when
kind of similar. We both kind of stumbled into the
yeah,
industry. Yeah.
exactly. So once I got there, they were supposed to kind of cover the moving expenses, and they didn't. So I just decided to kind of go my own way, and that's when I just went full time and started selling. So yeah,
And you're full-time virtual, right?
yeah, I'm full time.
Okay. So me and Andre are both really only virtual at this point. Have you done in-home appointments?
Hmm.
Okay. So we
Oh
both
yeah, for
done,
sure.
okay. So we both done in-home. We both, I mean, I switched over from virtual or from in-home to virtual just really because of like where we live and scheduling. Just like only got so many hours in the day, so I've got to squeeze as much juice as I can out of those hours. Like I can't be driving around 35 minutes into town and 35 minutes home, just for me as a mom and our family. Everybody's
Right.
different, so like you got to do what makes sense for you and your family. But I had done the in-person appointments and we had been down that chapter. And so we were ready to kind of make a transition for us. Um,
Right.
why did you end up getting into virtual?
Yeah, I think virtual. I mean, how I got ended up doing virtual is really the lead cost in Raleigh. It was like $30 a lead when I was doing in person. I did in person for about a year before I started doing virtual, but the lead cost more than doubled. It went from 30 a lead for the direct mail to around like 80, 90, 100. And the company was going through some changes at that time. So I think at that point, everyone really in the company, because I mean it was a pretty drastic change, because we're not the only team that had people start doing virtual. A lot of
Mhm.
people started pivoting their teams towards doing virtual, because a lot of people were kind of in the same position where it's like, man, paying $30 a lead is a lot, let alone uh,
90.
90 or 100 for an
Yeah.
opportunity. You don't even know if you're going to get it. So
Yeah.
uh, that's really the main reason I kind of switched over. And we dabbled back and forth for a long time. I think now everybody is kind of somewhat starting to settle into what they know as far as where they can get leads from that they know are, I guess, good. But
Mhm.
at first, we were all over the place. There was a lot of trial and error, and I think we're kind of starting to find that groove of what
Yep.
is good and what works for people. So
I agree. Yeah. As far as like lead types, I think for me and Andre, we both used kind of some similar leads for virtual sales. Um, we've used Ethos. We've used another type of like, it's really more of a final expense lead that they're filling out online. And then just some of the one kind of random ones that are on that Integrity Lead Center with the Ethos leads. If you don't know how to access those, like if you're brand new, just get with You can ask us, you can ask in the group, or just ask whoever enrolled you, or whoever, enrolled them, whoever your upline manager is, and they can help you know where to purchase these specific leads. But I will tell you, and I'm sure Andre can attest to this, um, don't try to go and like figure this out on your own as far as like, well, I'm going to find these certain types of leads. Like, there are lead vultures out there that will just take your money
Yeah.
and run off into the sunset. So you have to make sure that like Nick or Mike, Rachel, Aaron, Andre, Dan, Dave, me, like we've all been through, Marissa, Haley, so many different lead types. And so just definitely consult with someone before you just go buying leads. But I will say, like, overall, if the difference in like if you're going virtual and if you're doing in person, Nick's talked a little bit about this in the virtual trainings, but like if you are going virtual, the cost that you are paying for being virtual is that you're 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 basically at home. But you need higher volume of leads, because it's as easy as just them not picking up the phone. Whereas like if you're doing in person, you can go to their house and knock on their door. So like you have to have lead volume every week. Like, in my opinion, I think you need at least 50 to 100 fresh leads a week if you're doing virtual. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Andre, what would you say as far as like lead volume?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, definitely along the same lines as what you're saying. Uh, the I would say the big thing and the reason why she says that, or why people would say that, is because you got to give yourself more opportunity. When we started, Mallory, and like she was saying, all those names, Dave, Nick, myself, Aaron, whoever, when we all got started, we were all in person. So we all got the actual, we got a better chance to actually sit down and talk with someone. When you
Mm-hmm.
get on the phone with some of these people, if you can't get their attention within the first 30 seconds of the call, it's easy for them to just hang up. And so if you're limited on the number of at bats you're giving yourself, it's just going to seem like a drag, because you might call 50 people, and you may not get, but a quarter of them on the phone. So you just need more opportunities, and you got to call more often. If any of you guys are dialing now, I have a number. That's my personal number. I have a phone number that's my CRM that I use. That's a different area code. And then I also have a Google Voice. So if you're really dialing these people, 2, 3 times a day, you know, you can call them from different numbers, just like we all probably get some spam calls here and there, right? It's the same people just calling you from different numbers. All
Yep.
right. So you call them in the morning off your personal number, call them midday off a different number, call them at the end of the day off another number. If they don't answer, well, the last time, it's not like they're going to know that you called them the first 2 times early in the day. But I know some
Mm-hmm.
people they get a little like weary because they're like, well, I already called them. And it's like, well, if they didn't answer, it makes no difference. So, uh, yeah, it's a big.
Yep. I agree. And like kind of like what we were talking about earlier when he was saying calling 3 different times throughout the day, like those are your chunks, your AM dialing chunk, your midday, your afternoon, and then your evening if you can. It's really good to have an evening dial session, especially for people that work. But you're dialing enough throughout the day. Like if you are virtual, you got to just keep yourself busy. David Helgeson has talked a lot about that on calls, on the virtual calls too, of like, you need to be dialing enough that you're busy all day long. If you're not talking to someone, or you're done dialing, okay, now we have a requirement that came up with a carrier, let's shoot that email off real quick. Or like in between your dial sessions, like taking care of things that are money making activities, scrolling through TikTok and like social media, that type of stuff. You have to force that stuff out of your schedule, because that
Yeah.
and again, that's kind of the one of the cons of working virtually. I have like some notes that I wrote down, and I wrote on here, if you're not disciplined, working virtually is not for you.
Yeah.
Because like there's so much time throughout the day for your mind to wander and to make excuses to do different things. Your laundry, your grocery list, your dog, your, whatever thing comes up, like you have to stay disciplined if you're going to be working virtually because you don't have a person that you're driving to their house next to kind of keep your mind occupied. There's just
Yeah.
easy distractions for sure.
I think Nick said it this weekend. I mean, he said it before, and other people have said it before. But you could be we all work for ourselves, so you could be the world's best boss,
Yeah.
and be like, you wake up, you kind of get started when you want to. Everybody else is. If you have a job, you're there 8 to 4, 9 to 5, whatever, and you're working. But you might go to the gym at 7, get home, shower, make breakfast. Next thing you know, it's 11:20 and you haven't done anything. You haven't even
Hmm.
looked at your emails. And if you guys, or if any of you guys have kids, like someone like Mallory, she can't afford to do that because it's like if you get started at 11 o'clock and you're picking the kids up at, you know,
3:15.
3, you're
Yeah.
not getting any time. You have one good conversation. That's all the time you have for that day. So you got to be disciplined. It is hard for everybody, especially if it just I mean, obviously the discipline part, but it's not always going to work in your favor. So if you kind of let it get to you too much, like, oh man, nobody's answering the phone, or nobody's interested, or you know, you got some missed appointments, it's really easy to be like, I'm gonna go take a walk, or I'm gonna go let the dog out, or I'm gonna go do this.
Mhm.
It's super easy. I mean, I've done it, and
Yeah. Me too.
if you don't stay true, and that's why I like to kind of go back to what I said, break the day down. Just do it for an hour. If you want to look at Instagram or TikTok or whatever, do it after you dial for an hour, and you do that 6 times in a day. You got 6 hours of actual dialing time. Mike Weinberg talked about it this weekend. Um, you could look at your metrics on how many dials you have, right? And if you're getting a lot of dials, but a lot of people aren't answering, then how long are you actually on the phone? What's your talk time? Um, and there's ways you can track that, whether it's through a CRM or maybe you just manually track it. However, but that stuff is important if you're really trying to hold yourself accountable.
Yep. I couldn't agree anymore for sure. Tracking your numbers is huge. Um, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Like you just said, you may just literally have like a sticky note and you're like, okay, Monday, and you're just, tracking down how many dials did you make? Who did you talk to? What happened? Or get like a little spiral notebook. I talked to this person. This is what happened. Just keep it simple, but it really is eye opening. Like when you go back and look, you're bummed out about how your day went when you're working virtually, and you're like, well, I only made 30 dials. So no
Yeah,
wonder, no wonder I didn't talk to anybody. Like you got to be making at least 70 to 100 dials a day. Um,
yeah,
if you're virtual for sure, if you want
yeah.
to get some traction.
And a lot of people think, okay, virtual, like I'm saving so much more time, it's so much better. But in reality, when you go in person, if you book appointments every hour on the hour, right, you get 8 in a day. That's what I would do in person. I would start booking them every hour, and I would give people time frames. Hey, I'll be there between 9 and 10 or 10 and 11. That way, if I was quote unquote late or running over, they can't say I was late because if I said between 10 and 11 and I show up at 10, 10:45, I'm not really late. If my other appointment runs over,
Mhm.
but uh, when people no showed or maybe you had an appointment go quick, you're out in the field, so you still got to make use of your time, and you still got appointments coming up. So it's not like you can just call it a day. You still have other things to do when you're in person. But now that you're virtual, especially for me, if I don't have appointments, because I don't do a lot of appointments really, then if I make a sale early on in the day and I'm not, disciplined enough to be like, okay, that's a sale and that's nice, pat on the back. I can't just be like, all right, I'm done,
Mhm.
just because I got one early in the day and it felt good and now I want to go do whatever I want because that's not what we're here for. You know, you still need to keep going. So if you have
Mhm.
a call and right out of the gate you start your morning off hot and get something and you're done by 10 o'clock with that specific person, that doesn't mean, go see if your boys want to get breakfast or, whatever it
Yeah.
is. Keep going. Take a second, whatever. scroll through your phone if you got to take a break. Maybe you get on the phone with Miss Martha and she's chatting your ear off, and you just want to breathe for a second before you call the next person. That's fine, but you gotta stay true. And we all, it's something that we all can work on. It's a lot easier said than done, but you gotta treat it like you're in the field, and it's too easy to not treat it like that for a lot of people. It's too
Yep.
easy to be like, all right, I got one. I'm good for the day. You know, because if you don't think about it, if you stop it early on in the day, you could have gotten 2 or 3 more sales throughout the day. And momentum is a true thing, or is a real thing. You're feeling good. You got good energy. You just got one. People can feel that and hear that in your voice, right? Instead of when you're on the phone and you're just trying, it's not going your way. People can feel that too. When you get on the phone with them and you're mad because the last person got to the social and didn't want to give it to you. you know, you can't just be like, bringing that to the next conversation. So when you're feeling good, people feel that energy on the phone too. And those days where you're just firing on all cylinders, those are the days that you want to keep that momentum going. You can't just stop. You got to do it while you're feeling good, because who knows? That might be Wednesday, you get 3 or 4 sales in a day, but Thursday and Friday might be a little bit rough. So if you
Yep.
stop first thing in the morning on Wednesday when you could have kept going, then you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot, because those same people that you caught that Wednesday throughout the day might not be available Thursday or Friday when you call them. It might just be that might be your only opportunity to get them. So you gotta stay true to your schedule.
I think of it like a business, like a bakery, or something like that, donut shop, something real simple. Like, it's very redundant, like they got to keep making the donuts, but if they like sell a bunch first
Yeah,
thing in the morning when they open, and then they just close up shop because they sold a bunch of donuts, like they're going to be a you know big group
big
that
order
walks
for that.
in, like you never know if your business, if you're not working it, your business isn't open for the day. So, and then
Yeah,
people are quick to gripe and complain
yeah.
about why things aren't working, but ultimately you're not putting in the work that you're supposed to be putting in.
And
uh,
don't this is the last thing I'll say. Don't put so much on yourself. I have a bad habit of this, and I'll say it for myself, of just trying to do everything on your own. I know some people are like that. If you are struggling to, you know, uh, keep yourself accountable, then get on one of the Zooms with other people that are dialing. Or maybe you don't want to get on there, get with someone who you're close with, that you're comfortable with, that, maybe it's just one other person. I'll jump on a call with Dave, jump on a call with, guys from other teams that I'm friends with when I lived in North Carolina. Um, jump on the calls with them, and, they're just dialing. We're all on here calling together. It's easier to, hold yourself accountable than when it's just you sitting in silence, calling. Right. So if you get
mhm.
around people, because you're not in person, and because we're all spread out, everybody's in different states, get around each other on virtually. There's nothing wrong with that either. So yeah.
Yeah, that helps me a ton, because it is, the copy and paste of the dialing and stuff, it does get, you're like, oh, here we go, but having that camaraderie of just like looking on the screen and seeing that there's other people there that are doing the same thing. And to another thing I was going to say, recording your calls or having someone hear, what you've said, if something goes south big time, it's so eye opening. Like when you go back and listen to yourself, you're like, oh my gosh, I sound like that. Honestly, I learned so much just from listening to how I sound in calls. Or if you're having a bad day or you're in a bad mood or whatever, and you're like, oh my gosh, I no wonder I sound terrible. Who would who would trust me? Who would listen to me? Who would buy something from me? I sound like I just lost my best friend, like, or I just sound too schmoozery, like there are some times where you just have to kind of like reset, and listening to yourself on calls makes a huge difference. There's another point on here they want us to talk about of like how much you're working your leads. So when we get new leads, how we talked a little bit about it, like calling them, about 3 times a day, how long are we typically calling some of these like ethos or virtual leads?
Man, I'm still calling leads that I got a long time ago. Um, I think that if you are not maybe buying brand new leads, if you're not buying 50 ethos leads a week, right, where you're giving yourself quote unquote, even though the ethos leads are what, 30 to 60 days old or something like that, even though they're
Yeah.
not new, right? You're buying them new, right? It's new contact information for you. If you're buying those and you consistently have new leads coming in, then really, I think if you got 50 leads, I mean, it shouldn't take you any time to get through 50 people. You could get
Mhm.
through those 50 leads in one day. I mean, especially if you have something like a dialer. Some of you, if you're newer, you might not know what that is, but essentially, you're taking all of the leads and you're putting them into this system, and what it's doing is it's just rapid fire calling through all of them. And if you pay for that, you could go through it 10 times faster. I mean, I've blown through 100 leads in an hour on the
Mhm.
dialer. So if you just got 50 leads a week and you're throwing those into there, I mean, you might call these people. I mean, if you call them 3 times a day, times seven. I mean, that's plenty, right? So,
Mhm.
uh, I think that what you do then, I mean, at that point, if you've already called them so many times, you could still call last week's leads, call the ones from before. You got people that maybe said, hey, call me in 2 weeks. 2 weeks go by, call that person, put all that stuff on your calendar or on your little task list and call them like that. But there's an infinite, well, I won't say infinite, but there's definitely no shortage of people to call, especially once you get 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years into the business. I mean, I think if I probably go on my CRM and it doesn't even have everything on there, I've probably got well over 800 or 900 people in there that I can call
Go back and
uh,
call. Yep.
if I wanted to. So there's no shortage of information there. And with Ethos Leads being probably the most affordable option out there for the quality, um, you should really be cranking those ones out. And then I know you got the diamond, you got the platinum, the silver, all that stuff on the Integrity Lead Center. Those are even cheaper, but the quality is a little bit different. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And those are mainly final expense, I think, right?
yeah, I believe so. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah,
So
it's crazy how, even if you had a conversation with somebody and then, typically for me, it just depends on what I'm doing. Most of the time, if it's a final expense lead, trying to do everything in one call. A lot of times, if it's a term lead, if they're younger, healthy, they want term, they've been really shopping around, um, then uh, I'll do two call close. But the downside of the two call close is like there's that chase of if they don't answer that call. So, you know, I'm, kind of putting that lead back into my dialing pile, back into that follow-up pile, like he said, because you'd be surprised the amount of people you try, Nick and Dave talk about that being professionally persistent, where you're just calling them, maybe once a week, twice a week, checking in, send a text. See, sometimes you just catch them on the wrong day, the wrong time, and then they pick up the phone, six, seven times, 6, 7 checkpoints down the road. Oh yeah, I'm so sorry. We've been sick. We've been in baseball season. They just don't have the mental bandwidth to deal with it in that moment. So just being persistent professionally, not like a crazy psycho, but where you kind of just drive them nuts and they block you, but checking in enough that they remember that you talked. We do have a couple of questions.
yep.
One question is, I'm curious how you schedule appointments from appointments, because I found myself not being able to call right at the scheduled time. I've tried to adjust the way that I set appointments to give a time frame, and then I find it hard. How do you work around that? I just say about. That's kind of like my loose time frame. I don't know what you do, Andre. If it is a 2 call close, I'll give you a call about 5 to 6.
Uh-huh.
but I just say I'm on the phone a lot. So if it's a little app past that, it just means I was caught up working on something else. Um, but typically, like if they answer, I'm trying to do it all. I'm pushing to keep them on the phone as long as I possibly can. And they're like, unless they're like, I don't have time to talk right now, we need to talk later, then I'm setting an appointment with them. But if you can keep them on the phone, I say, this shows my age. I think I should be
Yeah.
GC.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're trying to keep them on the phone as long as you possibly can. But I just use the term about because it is really, really hard. Are either of you doing verticals? Is the question.
The oh, go ahead.
No, you can answer that one.
Yeah, I think the verticals are a little hit or miss right now, just because I know we were doing big group orders with a couple of the people on different teams, and so I know me personally, I think 2 weeks ago I tried to get on the order, but because there weren't enough people, what happens is I think they need more than 250, I think, in an order to be able to get the leads at a discount. So if there's not enough people ordering them, they're not at that discounted rate, which I think was like 18 bucks a lead. So
Mhm.
it ended up being uh, you either are going to have to pay more, or pretty much they're not going to do it. So I wasn't able to get it. I don't know uh, if people are still doing those. But vertical, I love the vertical.
Me
I mean,
too.
they were a little bit costly, but they were vertical was probably the highest quality virtual um, virtual lead that I've had experience with, and I've tried a couple different options when it comes to the final expense.
Yeah, the vertical leads, there's got to be enough of us to order. So if there's several people that are interested in doing vertical leads, those are only final expense. Which if you're newer, I think is probably better in my opinion, but that's just my opinion. Um, it's like more of a quicker sale, a quicker turnaround. But yeah, so if there are people that want to do it, we should kind of all get together and talk about that. How many leads are you buying each week? Somebody wants to know, Andre.
I think the 50. I think 50 is pretty good. A pretty good number for the ethos options. Um, just because you're always going to have that overflow,
Mm-hmm.
and ethos is going to take a little bit longer. Uh, because a lot of those ones, when I say take a little bit longer, a lot of those are going to be those Transamerica terms. So you're going to have a lot of people impending constantly. And those are more of the leads like that you're going to end up maybe doing on like a two call close, unless you write them on IUL Express or something like that. Really, you're
Mm-hmm.
going to probably end up following up with those people a little bit more than you would. Sorry, I'm doing so much moving around.
You're good.
Um, but those ones you're going to end up following up with a little bit more,
Yep.
um, just because of the type of lead you're usually dealing with, a little bit younger of people, um, not like final expense, not old Miss Martha who's just like happy to talk to somebody.
Just sitting
Even
there
though,
watching westerns and
yeah, yeah, she was waiting on your call.
uh-huh. Yeah. Yep.
So
Yeah.
I
I
think,
think
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I think like 30 to 50. I
Mhm.
mean, I think I think 100 is like a really, really good number, but that's a lot. And you have to find them like a really good price to do that. But
But I
um,
think too, if you're committed to really dialing, then again, it's just something I think you got to be honest with yourself on, because it's pointless if you're going to spend that money on the lead and not call it. Then you're
yep.
just wasting money, and then
Mhm.
you're going to be like, oh well, these leads suck, or I can't da da da, or I don't, whatever. But if you're giving yourself the opportunity and you're truly dialing these people, then hey, the sky is the limit. Because the good thing about virtual again is that
you can give yourself more opportunity, and you can keep calling. So you got 100 a week. I mean, you got 400 leads in your CRM by the end of the month, and you
Mhm.
obviously know how that can add up over 6 months, a year, 2 years, right? And of you consistently buying that amount of lead, you're never gonna have a shortage of people that you can call, and you're gonna have people who say, "Oh yeah, not now." Call me in 6 months, and you might be like, yeah, I know I do. I'm like, yeah, right, buddy. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
but if you do what I do when people say things like that, go on your calendar, your Google Calendar,
Make
put
an appointment.
call Joanne 6 months later, and called her. I mean, just forget about it. Okay, she said call her in 6 months, whatever. You're gonna keep getting leads. Um, you're gonna keep getting new ones anyway. So it doesn't
Mhm.
matter
Yep,
what she says. If she's not ready, or if she's not ready, whatever. Um, so just give yourself as many opportunities as you can, especially early on. And if you're not going to give yourself the opportunity to learn in person, then you need more. You're going to need way more opportunities virtual than you would in person. Because in
yep,
person, it's a little bit harder for people to say, "Get the heck out of my house," than for somebody to hang up the phone. You know,
yep.
I've had people hang up the phone on me. They didn't even listen to what I said. They hang up and I'll call them back right away. And they hang up again and I call back right away. Then they hang up again and I call them back and they'd be like, "Stop calling me." And then they'd finally, but that stop calling me was the split second that I needed to be like, "Hey, I'm calling you because of this." And they're like,
Mhm.
"Oh, shoot, I didn't know," but you would
Yep.
just think like, "Oh, they're just being you know,
Telemarketer.
yeah, they're just being or whatever, you know. But if you could get it off, and like she said, that's all you need is just a split second to be able to say, "This is the reason for my call," and that might be the difference right there. And they're gonna be like, "Oh well, you showed up as spam and da 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 da," and it's okay. You crack a joke and you keep it moving,
Hmm.
So
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah. And I would say, like, if you are kind of going back to what Andre said earlier, if you're new and you're just, or maybe if you're not new, maybe you've been at this for a while and you are like, just, I need help or something's not adding up, reach out. Like, the quickest way to fail at this is to try to figure this out by yourself. Reach out, because I can guarantee you it might be one little certain thing that you're saying or the way that you're saying it that's deterring people from talking to you. Or maybe you need to start recording your calls so you can hear how you sound, or maybe you come off as kind of a jerk on the phone. Like, there's so many things. Just reach out for help. Be humble enough to reach out and ask for help. We're supposed to talk about the Las Vegas event. It's 8:45. So coming up on May the 3rd, y'all, it's going to be really, really good. I know it's going to be packed full of content. Nick will train, David Helgeson will train, Aaron Wilson will train. I'm not really sure who else, but we've got so many, like, just amazingly talented agents within our group, where I know it'll be packed full of content. I know there won't be a lot of fluff. It'll be direct to the point. This is what we're going to train on. We're going to teach you. Bring a notebook. There's a room block that Aaron has arranged. And it's discounted rates on rooms, and you can room with some other people. There's queen beds, there's king bed, like you can do two beds. So if you're kind of tight on money, budget's tight, you can room with some people. They're going to do something. I think they're trying to do something fun Friday night and then maybe Saturday night, but the event is all day on Saturday. So they're going to talk about anything and everything: trainings, or scheduling, dialing, final expense sales, in the home, virtual, you name it, they're going to train on it. And then you'll have the opportunity to be there face to face and, like, go ask those people direct questions, and just get to rub elbows and learn. And so I know it'll be a really, really good weekend, and it's tax write off. So
Yeah, and also, guys, it is our team as well. For me, again, I think that with some of the bigger events, you want to talk to the people that you see on stage. You want to ask them questions, but they kind of got that celebrity status within the alliance, so they constantly got people coming up to them, asking them questions. And, maybe you're like me, I don't really like going up to people if I don't really know them like that. I
Mhm.
kind of just stay to myself. So here it's smaller, it's less intimidating. We're on calls with each other every week. We all, are pretty familiar with each other. So to have a smaller group and to be able to, sit in the same room and actually, be able to walk up to someone and ask them a question and it not be like 50 other people around them, trying to ask them their own questions. It can be better and a little bit more impactful for you, where you can actually, try to learn something. And like she said, not so much of the rah rah stuff, but actually learning, hey, what do I need to do to take it to the next level?
Yep, I couldn't agree more. I'm checking the Q&A. Oh, on the training. Okay, there's a Zoom option for the training. I don't know. They said they don't know. So in person will be awesome, but maybe we can figure out a way to do it streamed or whatever. Um, well, I don't really have anything else in my notes. You got anything else you want to add?
um I'd say the big thing, one last thing for me, just stay organized if you can. I know everybody's got their own method to their madness. I talked to Janet a little bit over the weekend about this. My back is killing me. Um,
Mhm.
but if you can, and if it'll help you, stay organized if you can, especially with virtual, because you are getting more opportunities and you're getting more information. So if you're getting 100 leads a week or 50 leads a week, that's a lot of people. And if you're sitting there printing off, at least in my opinion, if you're sitting there trying to print off everybody's stuff and write it down on paper, all your notes, then you need to call that person or they call you. And now you're sifting through stuff trying to find their number or who it is that just called you or left you a voicemail or whatever. Um, it can be pretty time consuming. So, get with someone if that's important to you. It's super important to me. There's no way I would be able to do this if I was still looking at paper.
Yeah.
I like to be able to go on my computer. I mean, I get calls all the time, and I don't know who they are, but I can go on my computer and type in their phone number and see exactly who it is. I can figure that out, who's calling me and what the last conversation was before the phone is done ringing. You know what I'm saying? You can't do that
Yeah.
if you got everybody's stuff written down on paper. So, if that's important to you, uh, definitely try to stay organized on this stuff if you're doing virtual, and it'll definitely help out. And there's things you could use. I use L2C CRM, which is a lead source that we had tried last year. The leads weren't really, the greatest for us, but I love the CRM. I kept
Same.
paying them for that. So I pay
Mhm.
them for the CRM, and they
Me
got a
too.
lot of extra stuff on there. I mentioned the dollars earlier. You can use the dollar on there. You can pay for that. It has workflows, which like if you were at the event, they talked about, all these little things you can do to touch point with your clients after the sale. Um, and one thing that I will say that they didn't mention is that the people on stage, the stuff that they were mentioning about the touch points after the sale, they were doing it manually. And it's not that that's not good, but it's hard to remember, right? And if you can do something where that stuff is automated, or you can get something where that's automated, I have the CRM that I'm using. Birthdays, um, 2 week
Holiday.
follow up, yeah, holidays, 90-day follow up, 60-day follow up. I mean, it's automatic, and it's not me. I'm not thinking about that stuff. I don't know when their birthdays are. I'm not saying it in a way like I don't care, but once you start having 100, 200, 500, 1,000 clients, how are you going to know all that stuff? But if you got a
Mhm.
system that says, "Hey, happy birthday from so and so, Andre Lee's office. Hope you're doing good." Um, People are going to appreciate that, and it still gives you the option to respond. So if they say, "Oh my goodness, thank you so much, honey," you can respond and be like, "Hey, hope you have a good one."
They love it.
And they
Yeah.
don't know, these people, especially if you're doing final expense, these people don't know that that wasn't really you. But you can still interact, and it just makes it that much better down the line. um
Yeah. I'm glad you said that.
that so organization, and try to, if you can get stuff automated, do that as well. and it'll help big time. The less you can get off your plate that you actually have to do, the better and the more efficient you can be with your time. And that's going to be good for virtual.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. Reach out to anybody if you need help. Don't feel like you're alone. Don't feel like you're on an island. There's tons of able-bodied brains for you to pick and ask questions and just seek help. So y'all are awesome. Thanks for hopping on. I hope y'all have a great week, and see who the top app submitter is for this week.
All right, y'all.
See y'all.
Night from me and Baco, baby.
Night, Paco.
See you guys. Bye.